Good morning, everybody. It is a blessed Tuesday. It is Transformation Tuesday. I am just so happy to be here with you all this morning. And I just want to take a moment to encourage you. Listen, no matter what this morning has held for you, listen, I woke up to all kind of chaos this morning. Lights not working, software not wanting to work right. But we are here, right? We are here full of purpose and intent. And I know without a doubt that God is here with me. And as long as God is with us, what can't we do? Right? What can't we do? Nothing. And so I just want to welcome you all to the series for this month called Transform Toxic Leadership. So for those of you who follow me, you know that every month, Lead My Heart has a theme where we talk about things on social media, share content, blog posts, our newsletter, all of that, with a particular theme for that month. And I don't know if you know, but 6 represents chaos, order, disruption, disturbance, all those disses, right? And so I thought, what better time than June to talk about toxic leadership? We have all experienced toxic leadership. We may even be toxic leaders at times. And that's something that we have to have the courage, the responsibility, yes, to admit, to be aware about that. So I'm not going to jump into my content too soon, but as we're all getting online here and getting everybody a chance to get on, you know what I want you to do, and that is to like this video, tag someone who your coworker, your team member, your stakeholder, your boss, your leader, your supervisor, your director, whatever you call them. Okay, tag them, because this is something that we all need to be talking about. This is something that can all help us to grow and develop. Maybe this isn't you, but maybe it's someone on your team. Okay, maybe someone that you have to coach. And so just getting some information to help you grow and be a better coach, a better leader, a better team member. We're all here for that. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, I want you to do, I want you to channel. And then I also want you to ring my bell. That's my bell, okay? So you don't miss any new content that I am dropping, because this is good stuff, okay? I really take the time to dig deep, to be in prayer about what it is that we need to talk about. Because here at Lead My Heart, we deal with matters of the heart regarding leadership. So it's not just your typical, let's talk about toxic leadership, here are traits. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. But we're going to go deeper than that, because everything is a heart issue. And that's why God tells us to guard our heart, because everything we do flows from it. And so we have to be so mindful of the things that are in our heart, the things that we carry, because that's where our leadership comes from. It flows from our heart. Okay, so let's get into this. Are y'all ready? All right, let's get into it, y'all. And of course, if you're here, say hello. If you want to ask questions, you want to add some knowledge, in the comment right ahead, because I invite all of you to be a part of the community here. So here you see a diagram, and this is the 3D leadership model that I teach, because we have to understand one way. Leadership is not two-way, even though a lot of people are just starting to understand that it's at least two-way. Leadership is really three-way. There's 3 dimensions to leadership. The first one is leadership. We all get that. It's how we lead others. The second one, though, is followership, understanding that leadership exists in a partnership. No one is a leader without a follower, and no one's a follower without a leader. We get that, right? That's pretty straightforward. And there's a commitment, there's a covenant that we make with leadership and followership. But followership is understanding that we have what's the word I'm looking for? We um we have a role. Yeah, I guess I'll just use that. We have a role in how people lead us. We really do. And so when I talk about followership and I teach that, I help people understand that, you have as great a role impact in how others lead and how others choose to lead you. But then the other dimension of leadership is what we're starting to talk a little bit more about is personal leadership. Here at Leadmart, we call it heartpreneurship. Why? Because we're being stewards of our own heart. Before we can lead someone else's heart, we first have to be leaders of our own. We have to be good stewards, managers, guardians, gatekeepers own hearts. And so those are the three dimensions of leadership. Okay. All of them matter. You can't have one without the other. And so in this series, of course, we're going to talk about the three dimensions of leadership. And today we're starting with leadership. We're starting with how we lead others. Why? Well, because people are most acquainted with that. That's not where it begins. It really does begin with partnership, but we're going to save that for episode 3. Okay. Episode 1, dealing with leadership. Episode 2, dealing with followership. And episode 3, dealing with, did I say episode 2? Episode 2, dealing with followership. Episode 3, dealing with entrepreneurship. Okay. Just so you have an idea of what we're going to be talking about these next couple of days. All right. So how we lead others. Toxic leadership. What am I talking about? We know that toxic leadership has to do with bad behavior. Bad leadership. No one's confused about that. But I do want us to understand that leadership is not a thought. It's not a thought. A lot of times, we put a lot into what people think. I don't care what you think. I care what you do. Okay. Now, a lot of that comes from what you think, but let's be honest. A mature, emotionally intelligent leader can think a lot of things about situations, all of it. Vision, where we're going, how people are doing it. I have a lot of thoughts, What matters is what I do. Okay. I have a lot of thoughts that are biased, prejudiced, that aren't right. Okay. They're not thoughts that I should act upon because I know that it would limit people's ability to move forward, limit people's growth. It would be toxic. But I'm mature enough to say that because I understand what leadership really is. Thought, a lot of times we say, oh, they're a great leader because of their potential. It's not even potential. Nope. I don't care what you have the potential to do. No one goes to work expecting your potential. No. We need your demonstration. We need your actions. We need the things that you not only initiate, but you actually execute. Leadership is a demonstration of something. Okay. Okay. And so toxic leadership is not the toxic thoughts that you have and all of that. No, it's actually your demonstration of behaviors that threaten and harm your organization and your team members. Okay. So I want to relieve anyone that's saying, gosh, there's a lot of talk about this and the other, and I don't agree. Hey, if you don't agree, I don't agree with a lot of it either. But when it comes to my demonstration, there are some things that I have to check to make sure that the demonstration of my leadership is in order. And so that's what we're talking about. It's the things that you do, things that you say, okay, that are threatening, that are harmful. So look at this picture. I've been using this picture for the marketing for the series. I love this picture. kudos to okay for having this in their repertoire. But I love this picture. When you look at this picture, what do you see? Okay, go ahead and put in the comment section. What do you see in this picture regarding toxic leadership? Okay, let me tell you what I see. I see looks like a he's well dressed, suit. So I'm gonna assume, okay, maybe I'm not making the right assumption, but I'm going to assume that he is a leader, okay, and he is out and about, walking with purpose. He's not being affected by all the toxicity around him, okay? But at the same time, it almost looks like it's coming from him. Like he's so unbothered. He's like, I got my mask. It's not bothering me. But it looks like it's like coming from him. And he's walking throughout these big buildings, which I'm sure like offices for corporations and stuff, with water and food. As if to say, hey, this toxic stuff is gonna kill you, but here's some water and food while you wait to die. Is that not what we see in organizations? Keep leaders walking about and their organizations, I mean, just fumigated. Like, I mean, just toxins seeping out of their pores. But they're walking around handing out kudos. Here's some water. Hey, you did a good job today. Here's some food. As if that fixes the toxicity, as if it purifies the air, and it doesn't. Because you do one thing, or you just say one thing, or you said something really, really harmful, but then you come back with, I'm just kidding. That's that water that's been handed out. Here's some food, right? And all this toxicity, I'm just kidding. Here you go. I'm just kidding. Here you go. Here's some snacks. And we can't be that way. But I love this picture because it really speaks to the heart of what's happening in organizations. So, toxic, that's not a word we want to hear. We do not want to hear toxic. What other words come to mind when you hear the word toxic? Okay, go ahead and put them in the chat. What do you hear? Okay, what other words come to mind? What do you think of? Okay, I'll give you a couple of seconds here because I know we have a delay when I stream live. Here we go. Here's poisonous, venomous, harmful, damaging, perilous, hazardous, like a cancer, pernicious, unsafe, dangerous, destructive, corrosive, virulent, like a virus that's just, I mean, going everywhere. And we have a new take on that word virus, don't we? Since the pandemic. And yes, lethal, vicious, polluted, polluted. No one wants to drink polluted water. No one. No one wants to eat poisonous food. But in leadership, we act as if like it's okay to give that out. And what happens at y'all, people are dying. Oh my gosh. They're being crushed. Their spirits are being crushed. In the last leadership, I shared a statistic that over 70% of people say that most of their stress comes from their direct supervisor. and they mostly impact their mental health more than anyone else other than a spouse. The direct supervisor is the one that impacts mental health the most. Y'all, that's not good. That's not good. Let's consider the most toxic places on earth, okay? I looked this up and I was like, this is really interesting. Maybe you've heard of some of them, maybe you haven't. I think we're all kind of familiar with Chernobyl in Ukraine. It's the site of the 1986 nuclear accident. And so it's one of the most polluted places on earth still. And yet they say even though the immediate vicinity is toxic, there's still people who live in the vicinity of it. Oh my gosh, can you? Okay, there's a place in Ghana. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce the name of this place there, big A, but it says that it's also referred to as the world's largest e-waste dump. And so they're burning massive amounts of e-waste, okay, that makes this place so toxic in Ghana. A third place is in Indonesia. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the river. It begins with a C, but it's considered one of the most polluted due to industrial waste, household waste, and agricultural runoff. Think about that. We get why these places are toxic: radiation, pollution, waste, and things like that, right? From agriculture, from companies and places like that, like chemicals. We get that. We get that households can be toxic, right? Because of abuse and control and things that can happen in a home. But we also have to understand that just like we understand that places can be polluted, homes can be abusive, unsafe, and toxic, so can the workplace. But you know where you'll spend most of your time? Not in these places, because that's like you live in there, unless you work there too. Not at home. I'm sorry to tell you, but you will spend more than 2/3 of your life in organizations. So imagine what that can do to your mental health, your physical health, and every other dimension of your wellness, which are 12. I'll teach that too. 12 dimensions. Imagine what that kind of toxicity in leadership and followership and entrepreneurship can do to your life. It's a big deal. This is a big deal. And that's why I'm talking about this, because we have to understand that whether it's us contributing to the toxic environment or others around us, we have to address it. Just like these places should be at the top of national global concerns, just like war zones or anywhere else that we deem unsafe. So should our organizations. It's that important. So how long has toxic leadership been going on? What do you think? How long has toxic leadership been going on? It don't even begin with like 100 years, 200 years. No, centuries. Yes, maybe even from the beginning of time. And I can say from the beginning of time because we can look at Adam, okay, the toxic leader, because he stood there, he stood close by, listened to her have a conversation with that enemy, and didn't say a word, didn't stop her, didn't say, honey, you know what God has told us? We can't do this. He stood back and watched it happen. Just like many leaders. They will see destruction coming. They will see team members knowing they're setting themselves up, self-sabotaging. And you know what? We'll just stand back and watch it happen. So we know this has been going on for a long time. And let's see how this has been addressed in the Bible. In Ezekiel 34, 2-4, it says, Son of man, this is God speaking. He says, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Who are the shepherds? Shepherds were known to be the leaders. Oftentimes you hear God using shepherds, not only talking about, yes, real shepherds who had real sheep, but he also began to use it as a metaphor for any leader who was an overseer, who was a shepherd, okay, a keeper of flocks. And the flocks are his people. And so he says, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to you, shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, meaning the milk, like the chunky milk and cheese that comes from them. You clothe yourselves with the wool, meaning their own covering. You now take it as your own. And you slaughter the choice animals. The choice animals. The top, the best, the most pure, the strongest. You eat them for lunch, but you do not take care of them. What does this look like in organizations? You eat the curds. You take the credit for what other people produce. You don't share the credit. Yes, you're team, but you act as though you did it all on your own. You're just based in the glory you do. And you're not willing to give anyone else credit. Clothing yourselves in the wool, meaning you're looking to only protect yourself. You're not providing covering for anyone else on your team, even though that's what God requires of you, is to provide a covering for your people. And then on top of that, as toxic leaders, you have the audacity to come after your best team members, the ones who are doing the most, the ones who are helping the most, who know the most, who support you the most, who help lead others the most. But you want to come after them. You want to come after their self-esteem. You want to come after their productivity, and you crush them. And you run them out of the organization. Because you're slaughtering the choice animals. I'm telling you. Y'all, everything we need to know and understand regarding principles of leadership. Yes, there have been great books written, and I'm going to write more. I sure will. But they're going to come from the principles of God, of what he's already said. Jeremiah 23, verses 1-2 says, Woe to the shepherds who are destroying and scattering the sheep of my pasture. Who are the sheep of God's pasture? Your team members, your partners. You think they're any less God's people because they're at work? You think they're only God's people when they leave or when they're sitting in a pew on Sunday? No, wake up, y'all. We have to wake up. Leading just employees and people who applied there. No. God has called you to lead his people. Yes, even in the workplace. Because God established work. You think work was man-made? God gave Adam work in the garden. He assigned him purpose. That's why I understand that even leadership, things of the workplace, is a God thing. It's a God thing. Okay, so declares the Lord. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says to the shepherds who tend my people. Because you have scattered my flock, because you've been toxic, because there's a high turnover, because people are constantly looking for a place where they can belong and feel included and have a safe place to work, because you've driven them away and you didn't care for them. You didn't so care. You didn't see it as a privilege to care for them. You didn't see it as your duty to care for them. He says, I will bestow punishment on you. He says, I will consider a duty, his response to punish. Yes, there will be consequences. And so for those of you who are enduring toxic leadership, let me tell you, that will not go without consequence. You pray for your leaders. You continue to be the great follower that you're supposed to be, and God is going to bless you. But you understand that you just keep praying for them, because that type of behavior will not go unpunished. You may not be around to see it. You would have been advanced, promoted. Okay, you would have been and started your own business before you see the consequence of that person, right? And the kind of leadership that they had, and the kind of things that they did to the team and to the organizations and to the community. You may not be anywhere near it to see it. But I want all of us to understand that this is a God thing, and that toxic behavior will not go without consequence. Last one, this is Jesus speaking. In Matthew 23, verses 1 through 4, it says, Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the scribes, and the Pharisees, they sit on Moses' seat, meaning they have the same authority that Moses had. He says, so do and observe whatever they tell you. Okay? Because they know what to do. Okay? They know what should be done. They know what I expect from my people. So do and observe what they tell you. But not the works they do. What? Did you hear this? He says, do what they tell you to do. They know what is best. They know what should be done, but don't do what they do. Why? For they preach, but they do not practice. How many, do you know a leader like that? Do you know a leader who talks a good talk, but doesn't do it? Right? They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. You're not the only one. Jesus knew him too, and he's addressing them. God knows. He knows. He sees all. He said, they know what to do, so do what they tell you. But please don't do what they do. Because they tie up heavy burdens that are hard to bear. And then they lay them on the people's shoulders, but them themselves are not willing to move them. Meaning they're not even willing to lift a finger to help that they have placed on their team members, that they have placed on their followers, that they have placed on these, that they have placed VPs and the other chief executive officers. They're not even willing to help. But they're good about making demands. Okay? They're good about saying, hey, you ought to be willing to work all night. You ought to be willing to sacrifice your family. But they're the first out the door. Okay? So what my point is here is that, y'all, this has been going on. It's nothing new under the sun. And God has addressed it. He is addressing it, and he forever will address it. Why? Because the leaders. He has established that office. And so not only does he have requirements of us to honor our leaders, to follow and obey our leaders. But you also need to see on the other side that God also has an expectation for leaders to be good leaders, for them to be good shepherds, for them to be caring, for them to be protective, for them to love. He does have an expectation for leaders. And that's what I wanted us to see here. So now let's talk about these toxic traits. Okay, what does that look like? You can put in the chat what are some of the toxic traits that you see, that you deal with. Maybe you even demonstrate at times and you know this, okay? You don't have to call any names. Don't do that. Don't do that. But go ahead and drop in the comment section some toxic traits that you see, that you have to experience probably every day, unfortunately. And now we're going to talk about the top 5 toxic traits. Okay. Top 5, hands down. Not only does research back this up, people talk about it all the time. These are things that people talk to me about, things that I experience all the time. Y'all, top 5, hands down. Number 1, authoritarian leadership. They don't consult you. They're the only ones making decisions. They don't ask for your input. It's only what they say. It's only what they think. They don't even seek feedback. They don't care. They don't want to know what's going on because they think they know it all. Yeah. They have boards that they don't even meet with because they don't want to hear from the board, because they see themselves as being the most important, the only person that can do, the only person who can think, the only person who has vision, the only. And what they don't realize is that they're creating a culture of fear, intimidation, lacks, disengagement, because no one feels as though their input matters. Their expertise, no, doesn't matter. Okay. So the power is very centralized, and they're the only ones pretty much who can make the decision. They're the only one who will make the decision. Number 2, lack of empathy. Y'all. I know you're probably tired of hearing the word empathy, but let's be honest, we only really began to understand what empathy really is these last few years, maybe the last 10, 20 years. Okay, so we have to talk about it because it's important that everyone understands what empathy is. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is the ability to say, gosh, I'm sorry that happened to you. Empathy says, I understand what's happening to you. And if I don't understand, I want to understand what's happening with you, why you feel this way. Okay, so you understand and you appreciate the feelings of others and the perceptions and the opinions that people have. And when you don't have that, when you don't have empathy, when you don't care about people's feelings, when you say, I don't care about people's feelings, it's one thing to say that you don't care about a situation. It's one thing to say you don't care about this. But when you say, I don't care about how you feel, I don't care about what happened to you. Listen, you are systematically, very effectively demotivating and disengaging your team. Number 3, micromanagement. Woo! Micromanagement. You control every detail of the project. Don't do this. Don't do that. I only want it done this way. No, let me see it. Only when we meet. Only think about it when I'm sitting in front of you. I don't want you to plan too much, because even if you do that, I feel like I have to come back and say, no, we can't do it that way, because I'm not the one who came up with that idea. Y'all, When you don't give people room to breathe and be autonomous and to think for themselves, you impede creativity. You stop things from moving forward. You waste time. Give people room to breathe. Now, when they show you that they don't do well breathing on their own, right? Or, when they show you that they're not doing well at working on their own, when they show you that, then yes, there might need to be some coaching, a little hand holding, but the goal even then should be taking place as quickly as possible, where they have the ability to think and do and creative. Because you think you're stopping them. The matter of the heart here is you don't trust. You don't trust people. And whereas you think you're hiding the fact that you don't trust people, people know you don't trust them because you are micromanaging. And so in their mind, they're thinking, then why did you hire me? Why did you hire me for all my experience, for all my expertise, if you weren't going to allow me to do my job? Okay. So you stifle growth, low morale, so controlling. It's like being in an abusive household and you're here, then I have to ask for permission to eat. I have to ask for permission to drink. I can't do anything without him knowing. I'm not allowed to leave the house unless he tells me I can leave the house. If someone were to tell you that, you'd be like, oh my God, what? Oh my God, you're being abused. Oh my God, that's not right. That can't continue to happen. I have to get you help. Yeah, you would respond that way. But you don't even realize that you're doing that exact same thing in the workplace. And it's called micromanagement because you have to have that sense of control. Okay. Number 4, poor communication. Toxic leaders often lack transparency, y'all. Oh my gosh, can you imagine that the first time you're hearing about something that affects your department, that affects the work that you do, that really should have been your decision or something made in decision with you is in a public meeting, at a press conference? Imagine that. You're hearing about something that affects your department for the first time at a press conference or in the news, instead of in a meeting one-on-one or in a team meeting with your leader. That's not okay. It's not okay for you to withhold information. It's not okay for you to state publicly information or what's going to happen or a decision that you made that affects people's department, their work, and you first did not tell them. Should not be taking notes in public forum because they're hearing it for the first. This is news to me. You're expecting people to support you. You're expecting people to chew on and agree. And they're like, I'm just finding this out. People coming up to them, what? Oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. I guess. I'm just now finding out. I didn't know. But then you want people to not respond that way. How are people supposed to do that when they're literally not in the know of what's going on? So, poor communication, not when it's not timely, when you're hiding important information or you're not letting people know what's going on, it creates instability and insecurity. It does. Okay. And that's not a good thing. Negative attitude. You're always negative. You have nothing positive to say. You have no faith. You have no hope. Everything is gloom and doom. You can't encourage and inspire your team if if your life depended on it. Okay? So they've come to the understanding that, well, we need encouragement, but we're not going to get it from him. We're not going to get it from her. Okay? because you're always focusing on the negative things. You're always quick to come back with what's wrong, what's not happening, what's not being done. But then taking a moment to first say, wow, I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate that this is where we're headed. I appreciate all the hard work you've done. That's okay to still come back and say, but there's still more work for us to do. But don't always be negative. So these are the 5, I would say, most happening, most occurring toxic traits in leadership. So what are the consequences of toxic leadership? Here are just 10 for you. Okay. Decrease employee morale, high turnover rate, reduce productivity, increased employee stress and burnout, lack of innovation and creativity, impaired decision making, damaged organizational reputation, negative well-being, cultural deterioration. Now, any organizational development specialist would tell you this, you're not going to succeed. Everything is going to point. Like nothing you try to do is going to be successful. It doesn't matter your policies. It doesn't matter your procedures. It doesn't matter how you've been in business. This type of toxicity happened in organization, starting from the wellspring, the source, leadership. As where do you think this goes? Where do you think this ends up? History shows you that it doesn't matter how long people go along with something, there's a tipping point. There's a straw that breaks the camel's back. There's a point, no more, enough is enough. What do you think is going to happen at that point? Okay. As these are consequential outcomes of toxicity. Okay. That are, it's like a virus. We don't want that. So this is what I have to say to sum up what we've talked about in the last several minutes. If your team can accurately predict your behavior, it's because you've provided them with accurate data. Researchers, we know this, we understand this, that your predictions will only be as good as the data. Okay? You can only be as confident that your predictions are something that you can use to make decisions on, only based on the quality, okay, of the data that you have. The more, the better. Where are people getting their data from? You're giving it to them. You act, how you, your consistencies. That's the data, also known as observations. Every data point is it's an experience, it's an occurrence, it's a happening. It's an impression on someone's heart. That's what data is. And so every team member is collecting data all the time. Every day is a data point. Every interaction, that's an observance. Every conversation, that's an observance. And then they're basing their actions on predictions. So if you don't like what your team is doing, if you don't like how they're responding, how they're predicting your behavior, if they know you're always late to a meeting, if they know you're always late to an event, why would they show up on? No, they should, because it's simply the right thing to do. I'm not saying that, okay, because that goes back to heartpreneurship. I have to lead myself and be accountable to myself. They continue show up on time, they always know you're going to be late. They're probably going to arrive even a little later because they're like, They're always about 20, 30 minutes late. So I can be about 15 minutes late and still get there before they do. Why? Because they're making accurate predictions based on the data that you've provided. So if you want their predictions to change, so let's take a step back. If you want their behavior to change, then the data has to change. Okay? Or let me take even a further step back. If you want their behavior to change, the predictions have to change. If you want the predictions to change, then the data has to change. And if you want the data to change, your behavior. That's the weight of leadership. It begins with you. Okay. So I want to be clear though, in talking about toxic leadership, because we still have this tendency to be so extreme and wanting to call everything toxic. Everything that you don't like or that is uncomfortable for you is not toxic leadership. There's some things that leaders have to do, many things that leaders have to do that you don't like. We don't like it either. But it doesn't make leadership toxic simply because you don't like it. Number one, making tough decisions, holding people accountable, providing constructive feedback, setting boundaries, enforcing policies and procedures, managing conflicts, making strategic changes. Yes, y'all, that includes layoffs. That includes having to demote or move people into different departments. That sucks. That's horrible. It's a really hurtful decision I have to make, not only for the leader, but the people involved. Yes. But sometimes that's necessary. Maybe it's necessary because someone didn't do their job well. Maybe it's necessary because of, things were happening financially that they should have intervened in earlier and they didn't. And now people having to lose their jobs. So they're not to say there's not toxicity or a lack of effectiveness or poor leadership that leads to some of these things. But the last one, what? Providing direction and guidance. Just because someone has to step in and provide direction and guidance, just because you don't like that person or you feel like you can do it all on your own, that's still the leader's job. And they're not being toxic simply because they're doing something that you don't like. And so that's where emotional intelligence and open communication is so key. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second. Okay, but let's talk about the journey from toxic to transformational. And it begins with acknowledging, okay, what is going on. Acknowledging, having an awareness of the harmful effects of your behavior on your team, motivation, trust, and engagement. Come on, you shouldn't be talking to people like that. You should be looking at people like that. You shouldn't have made that decision. These are things that people don't have to tell you all the time. A lot of this you already know. Now, maybe you don't know that your jokes are really hurtful and harmful and disrespectful and insensitive. Maybe you don't know that because people just know to laugh comfortably, just sound weird. We do that. We are conditioned to do that. A lot of times, and I've said this, oh gosh, so many times, a lot of times that leaders don't realize they are as toxic as they are is because what they don't realize is that they work around highly emotionally intelligent people, very spiritually mature people, very mature people in general who know how to effectively respond, to manage their emotions. They know how to not really try to take things to heart or be overly aggressive. They know how to do that. in a way that you don't. And so perhaps that is you. Maybe I'm talking to the one who says, no, I think I'm okay. Like they laugh at my jokes, da 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 da. But a lot of the things you're doing may be toxic, and your team just has a higher emotional intelligence quotient than you do. Okay. And so I see that a lot. And that's something that we have to be aware of. Also, understanding. So now that we're toxic traits, why do you do it? Where does that come from? Where does the you saying very insensitive, biased, prejudiced jokes, or statements, where does that come from? What's the root of that? Are there women or men who've hurt you? Is it because people often make you feel a certain way because of jokes, and you're like, gosh, the moment I get the opportunity to be in that position, I'm going to do the same thing? Where does it come from? And so we have to get to the root of the beliefs, the values, the attitudes that drive these toxic behaviors. Reflect on them, communicate openly about them, but also get team feedback. And that's where coaching begins to come into play here. Because in coaching, I'll help you get to the bottom of those beliefs, these ideologies that drive these types of behaviors. And will they go away? Not necessarily. We hope we can change them. We hope we can get to a place where maybe you don't feel that way because of a greater understanding. But if nothing else, the first step is to manage them, to check them, so that those do not get translated into the demonstration. Okay. And then also, which is the initiation of a plan for personal growth and transformation. It's learning those new leadership skills. It's guidance through coaching and mentorship and leadership development. And the great thing about Lead My Heart and our executive coaching is that we do provide the coaching, the life coaching, if you will, as well as the leadership development, the leadership coaching. Okay. And so you get the best of both worlds rather than just going to a life coach or just going to someone who does leadership development. You get the best of both of those worlds in executive coaching through Lead My Heart. Okay. So that's how we begin to transform this toxic behavior in leadership, acknowledging, understanding, and so a part of the self-awareness, y'all, is getting constructive feedback and perspectives from your team. Okay. It's the qualitative nature of the observations. See, your team, they're good at the quantitative. Okay. They're already analyzed it. They're set up linear regression. They have the predictions. They know if you do this, I can expect this. If you do this, I can expect that. They've done that. But now you get to come in and say, you got the numbers, but I need the qualitative data. I need to get some experiences and some feelings and some understandings of what behavior is in the team. And so here are some questions that you can ask, okay? Number one, how effectively am I communicating and providing clear guidance to you? How effectively am I doing that? Number two, am I actively listening to and valuing your input? And this is a yes or no answer, but you should be prepared to follow up. Yes. How do I do that? How do I show you? In what ways do I show you that I'm actively listening and I value your input? And if the answer is no, in what ways do that? Okay, so again, even for the yes and no answers, even though these aren't all open, be ready for the follow up. Number three, do I demonstrate a fair and unbiased approach when making decision conflicts? Ooh, I wish someone would ask me that. Okay, that's good. Yes or no, and then follow up. How? How do I do that, or how don't I do that? Number four, how well am I supporting and empowering you to take ownership of your work and your professional growth? Please ask. Okay. You see me, right? I'm telling you, your team, they're like, please, please ask, please ask. If you have evaluations coming up, these would be five great questions for you to ask during your evaluations of your team. Okay, so that they have that leeway as to also provide you with feedback and in a way evaluate you. Number five, are my actions, integrity, and ethical behavior setting a positive example for the team? You could really make it personal for you. Ooh, I'm telling you, y'all not ready. Y'all not ready for these questions here. This would be powerful. Okay, and what you do with it, all right, even more. So those are the five questions you should ask. Now, when it comes to building and transformational leadership, y'all, again, emotional intelligence and open communication is key. With emotional intelligence, y'all, you begin to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions and those of others. A lot of times, a lot of the toxic behavior, because again, a lot of times your team is very emotionally intelligent. Sometimes they're not. You'll know. You'll know. Um, but for those who are highly emotionally intelligent, they can know the difference when yes, their behavior, their attitude, what they're saying right now is directly related to the work here versus oh, that's at home. That's coming from home. That has nothing to do with this. But I understand that. Okay, maybe she needs to outlet, maybe he needs to outlet, but he he's responding, he's triggered by something that happened at home or somewhere else, not here. Mhm. But when you create this psychologically safe place for people to be expressive concerns in a very respectful and tactful way. I'm not saying people you don't get to express yourself any way you want to. We're adults here. We all know that tone and all of that matters. But to be able to give people the psychological safety to express feelings and responses, y'all, that creates a positive, supportive atmosphere that builds trust and fosters healthier relationships. And that's what we want. Open communication, that also, y'all, you're not going to get the open communication though without the emotional intelligence. If you have open communication without the emotional intelligence, you're going to have this. You're going to have, you're going to have all that, all those sound effects coming. Can you imagine having open communication without the emotional intelligence to go with it? That be for disaster. And so you want to ensure that as you're encouraging open communication, that you're building the emotional intelligence, the desire to understand and to recognize people's emotions and be respectful of them. Okay. And when you have communication, it allows for resolution. It allows for people to grow through conflict. And that's awesome. That's what we want. We want growth through conflict. So here's a conclusion and some key takeaways. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section. Okay. But takeaways from this episode. Number one, toxic frustration is not just what you think. Okay. It's what you demonstrate. And that's so important. I don't want you to walk away thinking it's just about because I have toxic thoughts. We all have toxic thoughts. It's about what you do with them that matters. Number 2, organizations are some of the most toxic places on earth. We know Chernobyl. We know what's going on in Ghana and in Indonesia. But y'all, also our organizations. Number 3, toxic leadership goes back to biblical times, and Jesus had to address it directly. And God is still addressing toxic leadership today. Number 4, toxic leadership is not doing the things you simply don't like. Okay? And we talked about that. Just because a leader is doing something you don't like, a lot of the things that leaders have to do, we don't like. They're uncomfortable. Okay? So it's not just about not liking something, but it's actually causing harm. And so my encouragement to you would be to look at the whole picture. Take a step back, say, was this one circumstance? Could this have been one event, or is there a pattern here? Okay, so take a step back. And I'll be publishing a blog about that in the coming days about what's not toxic and the stuff we should take to really assess toxic or not. There are 5 top toxic leadership traits: authoritative leadership, lack of empathy, micromanagement, poor communication, and a negative attitude, chronic negative attitude. Okay. Number 6, high turnover rates and reduced productivity are just 2 of many consequences of toxic leadership. Number 7, acknowledging, understanding, and changing are the keys to transformation. It can happen. It can happen. And I declare today, it so seek constructive feedback from your team. And I gave you 5 questions that you can ask, and I'll be sure to post those as well. And then also understand emotional intelligence and open communication are crucial, okay, to the journey in transforming toxic leadership to transformational leadership. Okay. Y'all, that's it for today's episode. I pray that you are blessed by it. Join me tomorrow for Transform Toxic Leadership, where we talk about purifying the waters, filtering toxicity from the current of followership. Okay, and we're going to be talking about the impact of toxic followership and unveil strategies to promote active environments. Okay, I love you all. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you want to reach out to me for executive coaching, for instructional teaching, motivational speaking, any of that, you may do so on social media at Lead My Heart 2022. You can go to my website at Lead My Heart. You can email us at contact@leadmyheart.com. Also, we have a phone number, preferring text and voicemail. I really answer that because I get a lot of marketing and skills, as we all do. But feel free to text or leave a voicemail, and I'll get back with you as soon as possible. And that number is 210-504-8070. I pray that you all have a blessed rest of your day. And remember, in everything you do and with everything you have, love God and love people. Goodbye.